Yes, fourth session. So I hope you got some energy from coffee, from sweets, and some oxygen as well. So we can continue. And I have the honor to share together with Doreen, Washing Institutions and Gender. And our first speaker, I'm happy to invite to speak, Jessica Brinton from Gates Foundation. She will talk about their experience when it comes to looking at gender and sanitation and the intersection. So, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you are all doing okay and are awake after the break. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Gates Foundation's gender journey. And that sounds like a weird thing to say, but it turns out that we discovered we aren't doing gender mainstreaming that well, and we want to do it better. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about why that happened, how we figured that out, and then what we are learning already. I will very humbly tell you my background is not gender expertise. I am a policy and advocacy expert. That's where my background is. And I've been working on WASH and global health for a long time. So that's what I bring to this. And like many members of my team, didn't have a lot of that expertise going in, and so this was a journey for us personally as well, and it's been really fun. So I'm excited to share it with you. So these are what we're going to cover today, what we're learning, and then why this matters for you. I hope you guys will be able to take away some of these lessons for your own organizations, but also please tell us ideas and feedback because we're still evolving in how we're thinking about all of this as well. So let's get started. So back in 2014, co-founder of the foundation, Melinda Gates, wrote an article in Science magazine. And in the magazine, she called out two things. One, that gender equality, gender empowerment, and gender mainstreaming are something we have to do better in development. And the second thing was that the Gates Foundation has to do better themselves, and we need to figure out how to do that. And so what we did is we decided to take a few of our 26 program strategies and try to take them through this learning journey and figure out how do we make this happen well, what needs to happen, and then how do we make grants that are more gender intentional? How do we help our programs and our grantees to think about this in a really positive way? So the WASH team volunteered, not surprisingly, and we said, okay, what do we need to do? And so what they did is they actually sent us through 3 different 4-hour-long trainings on gender. And so although I'm not a gender expert after that, and I actually went through it twice, I'm starting to feel more like one I did before. And it really went from the basics of gender and sex and definitions and all of that, all the way through how do you think about making better gender intentional grants? Because most of us are program officers. We also started thinking about what are some of the data gaps that are in the sector between WASH and gender, and how do we help to fill them as the foundation? And then how do we really think about our strategy moving forward and how we do that? And the results of that have been hopefully smarter staff members and program officers that many of you work with, but also that we have a couple of products that we're going to talk about today, some of the initial findings. And you will hear, it'll be quite a different presentation from our other systematic review because I am not an M&E person. So I'll tell you kind of some of the things I found really exciting in the research, and then we will have a webinar later on that gives more detail from our M&E experts if you guys want to dig down into the weeds and get really meaty. And here's kind of where we are and where we're going to be going in the future. This stuff is all in process at the bottom, so we still have a long ways to go, but we're excited with the progress we've made. And I would say that before this kind of gender intensive training that we've been going through, we really looked at gender in a couple of ways. One was really through menstrual hygiene management, and the other was through our technologies and a lot of the innovative technologies that we're creating and working with our partners to create. And that was really it. Now we're really trying to look at how do we integrate gender and think about gender across the entire value chain. In some ways it's really easy, and in some ways it's really hard, and I'll talk a little bit more about why that is. I'm going to kind of skip through this a little bit, but this is some of the work that we've already done, and we're happy to talk about this more in the break. We're really excited about MHM, and that will continue to be part of the overall kind of gender work that we're doing, but across that whole value chain. And so we won't think of it separately. We'll really think about it as integrated into the whole work that we're doing. And this is kind of how we've been thinking about it. And just a couple of examples of the work that we've been doing kind of in different pieces of these 4 components: access to knowledge, access to products, access to services, and better social norms. And we will share these presentations so you guys can read more about some of the things. And this is one of our partners in Africa. Okay, so I'm trying to move us along to the learning section because I think that's what most people in the room are interested to hear about. And so we did two things, an evidence review, a systematic evidence review of the linkages between sanitation and gender across the entire value chain. And we'll use that value chain to have our researchers really look at those different segments. And so the actual evidence review is about 100 pages, and we're working on a summary that's down to 30 now. I've reviewed it for like the 10th time. So hopefully we'll have a really manageable piece that you guys can look at and use for your programs. But we really wanted the evidence review to look at a few things. One, how does gender influence sanitation, and how does sanitation influence gender across that whole value chain? We also wanted to know how strong is the evidence that's out there. Let me tell you, there are a lot of gaps. And so I'm going to make a lot of generalizations here today that are going to reflect sometimes only a few studies, in some cases maybe 10 studies, and some maybe one. So when you read the evidence review, all of that's in there and actually talks about the quality of that evidence, but I'm going to make some pretty big assumptions today, just kind of as a summary. That's exciting because it means there's a lot more work for all of us to do. So we should think of that as glass half full, but it does mean there's a lot of things we don't know yet. And then, of course, we want to look at kind of what are those gaps and how can we invest in filling those gaps? We, the foundation, but more importantly, we a community. And how do we think about that? Okay, so I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I know I'm on a schedule. So the first one one of the findings that we found was, not surprisingly, there are gender differences. But that's an important thing to establish. And those differences do impact programs if you don't take them into account. And they also are relevant across almost the entire value chain. There's two big gaps. One is around participation of women in activities and in decision-making and in leadership. Those are pretty big, important things. And you'll see that shows up in some of our learning agenda issues later. The second is barriers. There are a lot of barriers that result as a result of gender differences, and that not considering gender differences actually creates barriers. So that's really important and something we really need to start to think about more across our work. Those underlying gender norms that we're all aware of but don't necessarily think about when we're planning our programs, the evidence shows they do make an impact and change the results of our work. Relationships. This one's not going to be shocking. Marriage and relationships are complicated and therefore really change the way that we interact with households. And that's important if you think about that from a decision-making, point of use perspective, access, purchasing different products. And I'm not just talking about menstrual hygiene products, any kind of sanitation product or technology. And then, of course, decision-making and participating in larger decision-making processes in a community at the state, national, or international level. This was an interesting finding, and it is more nuanced than what I have up here. What we've found is that sanitation is not the driver of gender-based violence. There are many, many factors in the communities where women experience gender-based violence that are causing that. But we do know that when sanitation is unsafe, it does create women to fear gender-based violence, and therefore, for example, in Nairobi slums, do flying toilets, or in other situations, change their mobility and access because of that fear. So even if it might not be the cause of the gender-based violence, we do know that the fear is very, very real. Learning and work. It turns out, this is not surprising, I think, either, but it's good to have the evidence to back it up. Bad sanitation impacts boys and girls. We do know that it can impact girls more, particularly when they're having their period. But it impacts both. And there still is relatively limited research on the gender differences that impact men and women in the workplace. There's one study that I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes that I think is really interesting that points to maybe there's more here than we originally thought. Technology. Gender differences are rarely considered in new technologies. And this is still true, even though we all think we're really evolving in the way we're thinking about this. The evidence shows it's still true. So it's something we need to work on. And one of the things here I think that's interesting is that still menstrual hygiene products are not considered in technology. So we talk about it a lot, but they're still not really integrated into those technologies. And policy. We've seen some exciting things happening lately, but there still just isn't a lot of evidence looking at how women participating in policy processes impacts whether or not those policies are better for women and men in generally. And there's something interesting here, and that's that there's some really significant movements around menstrual hygiene management policies in countries like Uganda and India. But we don't really have an assessment of what good policy is for those things. So how do you tell a country whether or not they have good policy if you don't have a way to assess that policy? So there's some room and some work, some interesting things we can dive into here. And as a policy person, that gets me very excited. On the M&E front, there is still really M&E only limited to access and use. And that's with pretty minimal consideration for measuring outcomes. And so again, something really hard that we're going to have to figure out and work through together. And I was excited to hear about some of the other presentations where we're looking at improving M&E for advocacy and outcomes. I think that'll be really valuable to fill this gap. Okay, so I'm going to, this is really hard to read. And so I'm going to pull out a couple of the things I found most interesting from this and just quickly flip through it. And then again, feel free to dig in when the publication's available, because there's some good stuff in here. So an interesting finding, and we know this, that the discriminatory gendered social norms impact men and women. We're not only talking about women, we're talking about gender. In Zambia, rural men are prohibited from sharing from toilets with in-laws and grown adolescent girls. That means open defecation. I have 1 minute left. Oh my goodness. See, I get too excited and I talk too much. Okay, I'm going to flip to the thing that I think is really interesting about the workplace. Okay, so in this is the finding about the work study, and I mentioned there just isn't a lot of research about this. But this is from Pune, India, and this is a forthcoming study that we got our hands on, and it basically shows that we think that women are taking lower paid jobs just to have secure sanitation. And this is probably due to the gender-based violence fear. This is probably also true because they can't access toilets in places like marketplaces, which have more bathrooms for men, or it's easier for men to relieve themselves in public. So I have to flip through all these. Sorry, there's really good stuff in here. It's just a teaser. We'll share these. And this is the biggest finding, and that is that sanitation is not on its own the solution to achieving gender equality or improving women's empowerment. But it can play a really important role, and it has to. And so I'm going to now flip through all this other good stuff, and we're going to, I'm going to just put up some, sorry guys. I'll share them with you. Okay. So some ideas for action. And this is some of the stuff that we actually talked about in our 15 hours of gender training. And it's really things that we're thinking about every day. So how do we really think about gender analysis in our work? And when I say our, I mean our. How do we think about not only from the proposal writing process, but all the way through to your work plans and actually implementing them? How do we check our own gender assumptions? We have a lot of them. We all do. So how do we make sure we're thinking about that? How do we get capacity on our staff? It's unlikely we can all hire gender expert teams like the foundation has, but how do we make sure our teams have enough knowledge to do this work? And then how do we think about how we analyze information, get disaggregated data, and think about data collection methods to make sure we're getting the information we're actually trying to get? And with that, I will put up the teaser that additional resources are coming soon. The evidence review, the summary, and the 3 programmatic case studies, which I didn't get a chance to talk about today, but really go in depth into how 3 different programs are trying to think about being gender intentional in their work, and really analyzes the challenges and successes they've had. So those will all be available this fall. I'm hoping in the next month, but I put December just to be safe. And here we have a study that came out a couple years ago that's more on the menstrual health and gender equity that is available online on the FSG website. So thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Jessica. I think you have created a lot of
buzz.
Interest. So yeah, I think people want to know more. So we're gonna wait for those studies to come out. So great. Thanks a lot. So questions? Do we have any? Please. Yes, please.
Thanks, Jessica, for the great energetic presentation. One question: I know that Gates Foundation focus a lot on water, on sanitation, but did you also look slightly at water issues that are also related?
Well, some of the programs dealt in broader WASH definition. So in that respect, yes, but this really did focus in on the interlinkages between sanitation and gender. Yeah.
Any more? Yes.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for the interesting presentation. Just a question: if you've occurred or you found in your doing the research, any paper studies related to female inmates in prisons and sanitation in, yeah.
I can safely, so the study included 100 research papers, both published journal articles and gray literature, and I did not read all 100 of them. I will be honest about that. In the deep evidence review, there weren't any examples that were pulled out about prisons. So I don't know, but I'm happy to share the full reference list with you in case there's something in there that you're particularly interested in. But to my knowledge, that wasn't pulled out in any of the summary documents. Yeah.
More questions? Otherwise, I have one. No, just you had a lot of action points for your own funding programs. How do you think this work will, or has it already influenced what you're financing and on framing your financing?
Let me put up this question.
Maybe you.
List. Yeah.
That flashed.
So it's great to get another slide in. Currently what's happening is we're really working with all of our grantees and potential grantees to try to weave in gender more intentionally into those proposals. And that's happening this year right now. And there is already an expectation within our team that that's something that you'll get asked during kind of our internal review process. How are you thinking about gender? How are you thinking about the whole value chain or the pieces that proposal is really looking at? So that's already happening. And then these are a few of the prioritized learning questions that we've pulled out. Some are around policy because it's a big gap, decision making and influencing at different levels. But you also see here that there's things around social norms and really thinking about, again, how to mainstream gender in sanitation programming and design, because we want those tools that are going to help all of us do this better and not just think about it from an internal Gates Foundation perspective. So we think of all this as kind of global good, and we're hoping to continue to share what we're doing and improving, hopefully, over time. So, yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jessica. And then I hand over to Doreen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jessica. A round of applause. So, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce you to the next presenter. That is Dr. Ulrike Pokorskki. You want to go after Bella? Oh, okay. Then, sorry, just a quick change. Ulrike will come after Bella, so I will introduce Bella Monse. Bella is working for the GIZ Sustainable Sanitation Sector Program and will give us an overview on the Fit for School program that is worldwide. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I will give you a very brief overview of some principles for school programs, wash-in schools programs. There is a regional Fit for School program implemented in 4 countries in Asia: Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, and the Philippines. Going to the next here. Yes, you might all be aware of the SDGs for WINS. There are new sustainable development. The wash-in schools is covered by the SDGs, and very important now, there are 3 target areas. It's very mainstream now. It's drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene. And this is coming from the JMP, that there is also now a laddered approach what schools should reach. And by the year 2015, it's expected that all schools should reach basic services, which means all schools should reach drinking water is available in school. Toilets, usable toilets, that new. We don't speak of just toilets anymore. We speak of usable toilets, which means functional and clean, which is completely new aspect. Suddenly we have maintenance aspects in the indicators, which is totally new. And for hygiene, schools should have basic hand washing facilities with water and soap. So availability of soap is suddenly an indicator. And these indicators are measured in the education sector. And each and every school has to measure that now. It's part of the EMIS Basic Education Information System. So all schools do that. In order to reach that, the question is, how can that really be reached? Programs have to be very, very simple and have to engage within the system. Only then they can be scalable and sustainable. And that's I think it's a very important slide to see that only interventions which are so simple that a system which is normally a very weak system, the education sectors are very weak. If we come with complex solutions, they will never be able to absorb that. And scale can only be reached if the education sectors themselves implement it. So the scalability will only come in when the sector themselves implement it. That means the education sectors themselves scale it up. Cannot be done by donors. Never ever. We had that slide this morning. Again, infrastructure alone will not solve the problem. If anything is going to happen to improve the situation for children, a whole school-based management has to be there with parents involved, with the building of routines. If you want to do behavior change, you need to establish routines. The school is the best place for that. So the goal is really to support government partners to sustainably scale up national WINS programs in selected Asian countries. That's what the program is doing. And you can, for example, see here a group hand washing facility in Laos. Very, very simple. But these things can be scaled up because that's done by the government themselves. Just briefly, this program has started in 2011. Or the beginning of 2012, basically started in all of these countries with only model schools. And the scale up has always been done by the government themselves. Yeah? And that's what this Fit for School approach is about, really supporting the government to define their own indicators, to define their own program and help them to scale it up. The good thing is when it's a regional program as this, there's a lot of learning between each other, between countries, so the countries learn from each other, they have exchange platforms, same approaches can be used, same materials here and there can be adapted to the country context, and you can also use technical systems or M&E systems, so there's a lot of exchange between the countries. And that's already my end. Yeah, and of course all of this goes into the work of SuSanA. And interestingly, we have a lot of questions from many other countries, or even government delegations are coming with their own funds to see and to learn, because that's what interests them, what they can do by themselves. Okay, I rushed through it, so I hope I got it.
Thank you very much, Bella. Questions?
Thanks, Bella. I really like the simplicity of this. But there is one, if you go back, can you go back to slide number 2?
That one?
Yeah, this one here. You talk about functional toilets, but I think I'm not sure if the functionality just stops at the user. My experience from Africa is we need to also put the emptyable part of it, because in most cases what we see is the toilets that are built in schools, rural schools, they are still unlined pit latrines, and every second year they have to build a new facility.
You can see it's called improved facility. It's not unimproved, it should be improved, which should also be, and that's included.
But
there. Sorry.
But that definition of improved facility is very broad, and in a lot of cases that is missed out. And what we see is schools are huge generators of fecal sludge. And
absolutely, no question. This is also not coming. This is the global, these are the SDG indicators for washing schools. They're coming from the JMP, the Joint Monitoring Program. Together with an expert group, these indicators were developed. Of course, they were very broad to cover all status. Yeah. Also, you can have, even for advanced situations, countries should define their own advanced levels. But I fully agree. This is also not talking about ratio. You do not find ratio anymore. Previously, you found ratio, 25 toilets, 25 girls for one toilet, 50 boys. All these things are not in here anymore because that's too detailed.
I think the interesting thing, to be defined at national level. I think that's where our support from many of us should come in, because it is that's the broad thing. It's sort of a driver under SDG 4. So now something will happen. Now it's our role that something good happens.
The definition that's specifically for these, advanced.
But in fact, there is a definition for basic service and the word improved that JNP is promoting. So I think it's great that at least at that third level up, there's going to be some consistency globally for what that means. So, but we have to do our part to promote what the word improved means and to promote what the word basic service means, because those are terms that have been introduced by JNP very recently.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, another round of applause for Bella. Okay. Okay, now I'll quickly introduce our next speaker. That is Dr. Ulrike Pokorskki. She's the head of the Sustainable Water Policy Sector Program since 2012 and is the program director of Sanitation for Millions. And during her session, she will provide us with input on the newly launched Sanitation for Millions initiative. So welcome, Ulrike.
Thank you, Doreen. Yeah, the reason I wanted to come after Bella is that we're actually building on the experience of Bella, and so then it's easier if you have her experience first. I would like to present a global program which was built, which was originally conceived as a program to foster access on sanitation, and the financing could only be secured by focusing on the politically hot subject of the refugee crisis, which in fact adds to the strain of sanitation. So combining access to sanitation with a refugee focus was the starting point for this global program. It is not limited to refugee situations, but it was a starting point to make it politically appealing. Sanitation for Millions focuses, for a start, on sanitation in public institutions. It is conceived as a multi-donor program. It's conceived to grow, so eventually it is also going to extend its reach to the household level. But for the time being, we're working in schools, where we're strongly building on the experience from Fit for School that Bella just presented, in mosques in Jordan and in basic health units in Pakistan. We're working on improving the situation in schools, we're increasing access to public sanitation, but also on creating adequate framework conditions, tackling what was just mentioned, the sanitation chain to the transporting and disposal, but also looking at creating job opportunities along the sanitation chain. And last not least, there is also the idea to create leverage and to get other donors on board. The pilot countries we've selected so far are Jordan, Pakistan, and Uganda. They are relevant in terms of refugees. They are relevant in terms of the sanitation situation. But they were also countries, and this is a strength of such a global program, where we found willingness on the ground, we found policies that were set to go to the next level. We found willingness, so we found that we go with a program where there is need and willingness to act. I won't run you through the details of the country concept, but maybe some highlights from Jordan. In Jordan, we are focusing on inclusive access in schools, and it actually has been interesting to see that the focus on inclusion in sanitation actually makes the operation and maintenance of the toilets easier, because since the disabled pupils, the special needs pupils, they usually often have an adult accompanying them. So there are more adults present in the sanitation facilities, which has a totally positive side effect on vandalism. So this is very interesting. Inclusion actually increases or improves the operation and maintenance. Yeah, we also have another approach that may be interesting is to build on existing positions. So in what we call the German Hausmeister concept, we train the guards of the schools to become caretakers to do the repairs. So we don't need an extra budget line to have someone who does this, but we use people who are already there, train them, and give them an additional job satisfaction, an additional title, so we won't need a new budget line within the ministry. Yeah, in Pakistan, maybe the interesting thing, one interesting thing concerning gender that we found in Pakistan, because gender was mentioned, was that the girls' schools actually have quite good results in terms of cleanliness, because the girls themselves, they will clean the school. So it's relatively easy to get the operation and maintenance and the cleanliness, at least, not the plumbery work, but that's relatively easy to get it done in the girls' schools. On the other hand, if we look to the concept in the mosques, we have an interesting gender concept in the mosques in Jordan, using female religious workers, which are called Waidat, for sanitary education. We wanted to roll this out to Pakistan. It won't work because women won't have access to the mosques in Pakistan. Well, for the sake of time, I don't go into the country concept of Jordan. I just mentioned it is a results-based approach. So the money is going to go where the results are best. And we can have additional countries also based on where we expect the best results. Yeah, well, I don't go into this because I think my time is over. If you want further information, come to me. I give you my card and we can go further into detail.
Great. Thank you very much, Ulrike. Any questions? Elizabeth?
Thank you so much for an extremely interesting presentation. It was something definitely related to your presentation, but also on a different level that kind of flew through my head when you said just now that the best it's results based, which we normally think is very good, and the best projects will continue to get funding. But if we connect that back to what we talked about this morning about failures, is this kind of focus on result-based? What is that going to do with the reporting about failures? It's a general question to everybody.
Well, I think that, the diversity of the approaches, we try different things, and the things that work best will be upscaled, and it's part of, I think, if we want to be innovative, we'll have to try things and try them first, and if they won't work, then it doesn't mean, I think it can be a chance, an opportunity actually. If you have a program that is set out in one region, on one subject, and if it fails, then your program funding is ending, you cannot communicate it has failed. If you have this kind of global program which has different arms, if the work in, say, the mosques in Jordan doesn't turn out to really work sustainably, if we encounter barriers that we hadn't thought of, well, we can then, instead of putting the money into the mosques in Jordan, put it into the inclusive schools in Jordan, or also into the basic health units in Pakistan. Yeah, so it doesn't mean that, you know, our program is in danger, because if we're honest, this is what sometimes happens, right? That you do not report your failures, because then you're afraid if you report your failures, my program is going to be closed down, and what will become of me? Yeah, so and this is why in the program we work together with our bilateral program, which work often on slightly different issues. So they help us getting the sanitation approaches done, but their jobs does not depend on sanitation for millions. They have another thing they do on the side. So I think this kind of approach actually is a tool to reporting where we found difficulties. Like I said, with the mosques in Pakistan, we thought we're going to bring this mosque approach to Pakistan, and we found now it doesn't work out.
One more question from Antoinette.
Yeah, I wanted to react on what Elisabeth said about RBF approaches and getting failure out, because SNV, and I'm very closely involved in that, SNV implements a very large rural sanitation program, which is completely RBF funded, and we're in the 4th year now of it. And I think I'm really enthusiastic about it. It has been very tough, but the good thing in an RBF setting is that you already from the start agree 100% success rate doesn't exist. Whereas in many other funding situations, the discourse is it's going to be 100+% success rate. So I like that we ground that type of conversations, and then we start a conversation, okay, this is the type of success that we want to have. It's not just numbers. Now, how do we measure that in a way which is convincing for both of us, but which also isn't too expensive, right? So I think that we should not be afraid of RBF in thinking that our failures will not come out. My personal shock coming back to Europe is the level of unrealistic discourse about development in which we promise everything, and the success rates are 200%, it appears, right?
I totally agree. I think it's a very good point, and we actually do this. We discount for expected failure, expected unsustainability.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ulrike. Another round of applause, please. Okay.
Okay, then I have the pleasure to invite the next speaker, Ina Jurga from WASH United, head of washing schools.
Almost.
Yeah. Some program. Okay. And I guess you will talk more about menstrual hygiene, the Day 2017, and also a new initiative that you have, Menstrual Hygiene Alliance. So please.
Yes, hello everyone, and thanks SuSanA for inviting me to talk about menstrual hygiene management, and which I haven't found a single session in the World Water Week program that capture this, so thank you, and also Jessica for paving the way. Yes, I'm head of behavior change communication for WASH United, and also the international coordinator for MHD, which I'm going to introduce in a while, and I'm also going to tell you a little bit about the Menstrual Hygiene Alliance, which was recently launched. Okay, it's a bit wait, yeah, okay. Half of the world menstruates every month for a large part of their life. That's a fact, right? Yes. However, there are a lot of challenges around it. So the topic is clothed in silence and taboo in many countries around the world. But particularly in developing countries, girls face challenges in getting access to education. Only, for example, 1 in 2 girls in India knows about menstruation when she has her first period. There are challenges regarding access to sanitation, water, disposal options, and also to sanitary products. There is overall very low political and funding priority giving, for example, compared to water and sanitation. And the impacts on women and girls, they're real. There's stigmatization and exclusion for girls. They suffer reduced confidence and shame for just a very natural bodily function every month, and especially when they start puberty, a very sensitive time in life. They miss school and work, and we have reported studies that says 1 in 2 girls in Uganda report missing 1 to 3 days every month, missing out on education. Same as also at workplace. And increased health risk from unhygienic practices are quite common. Sorry. Yep. Okay. And WASH United, as an NGO in Berlin, we thought about how to address those challenges. And 4 years ago, we came up with the idea to establish a menstrual hygiene day, which was celebrated on 28 May. And to really catalyze progress on awareness, education, and advocacy. And the idea was to really create an open platform for everyone to engage. And that's the beauty of awareness days. So while WASH United as initiator manages the partnerships, manages campaign content, etc., it's really everyone can engage, from individuals to organizations, everywhere. And we can really see it's a wave that lifts all the boat by just having the opportunity. It fosters partnership and collaboration at global, national and local level, which is really beautiful. Oops, sorry. Yep. And I want to explain you a little bit what happened this year, because it was the 4th year, but we saw more action than ever, and it makes me really proud. We chose the topic of education, and under the slogan, education about menstruation changes everything, we created lots of campaign materials for partners to use. We had a campaign on social media, and we used the storytelling principle, what changes can be achieved through education. And I want to show you the highlight video that we created. I think I saw it here. Yeah, it's very short.
That's the amount of times a healthy woman gets a period each year. You can have access to the entire uncut footage if you choose to support me. So click the link and go to my page. Right, see you guys soon. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. That's not mine. Oh, maybe it stopped now. I can play this. Yeah, but there was a different video. Okay.
And that's the minimum amount of times a healthy woman is told the biology limits her mentally, physically, and emotionally. You see, since a young age, I was taught menstruation was supposed to be kept in the hidden or whispered. So I'm constantly paranoid, carrying whisper, stay free and more, just so I could stay stress-free, hoping no one whispers behind my red-stained jeans. But you see, I was born into a house of privilege, where my parents...
Yes. Hi.
Can we do this?
I can't speak English. Well, maybe we can discuss this in the...
Parents taught me that my periods don't limit me. The only thing that could limit me would be my mentality. So on the days I stay in bed because I'm bleeding out of my legs, my brother tells me to go be productive. He tells me there's a world out there I'm yet to conquer. In the 6th grade, Shashwati ma'am gave the sex talk to my class without separating boys or girls. She sensitized boys to puberty and growth, and she introduced us to a whole new world. That year, when I stayed in my uniform, the very same boys handed me their hoodies to wear. They told me it was my Superwoman week. Because if my body's made of stardust and my skin matches land and my body's geology can make continents tremble and mountains move, you aren't allowed to tell me that I should be shy because I paint a town red for a week every month of my life. Because if I've been given the chance to believe that we could live in a world where we could talk about this openly, we could live in a world where we are taught to bleed with pride, in a world where something this common and natural doesn't force us to hide, in a world where we celebrate the only blood that bleeds without violence, in a world where pads aren't rapped and monologues aren't silenced, in a world where you and I can just be as we are, irrespective of our genitals and irrespective of our bodies, then we must. So, ... That's the minimum amount of times we can encourage and empower a woman and make sure a period doesn't equal a stop.
Still get me shivers. I saw it many times. Sorry. And this video went viral. It was amazing. So we had 7.8 million viewers on our Indian Facebook page alone. It was shared in almost by Bollywood stars and almost all Indian media, but also global media picked it up. And So it was really a contributor that this year's MH Day really achieved from coming from silent to vocal. We had an amazing number of 158 million people that we reached through digital channels, and we had a significant coverage in TV and radio and print media. As you could, this is always a bit technical here. Online campaigns were conducted also by other partners, and here are some in the rooms, like Plan, UNICEF, Global Citizen, and Indonesian government. And what was really amazing to see was just not the reach. I mean, it was great and fantastic, but it created a discussion, it created dialogue among the average people beyond the development sector that is engaged. So the figures on top showing that we had 15 times more interaction rate on the average post, and people discussed gender equality. People in Nigeria picked up the same message from the video. So we can see that maybe MH Day this year really contributed to break the silence and start the conversation, which made me quite proud. And of course, events contribute to break the silence on the ground. I was sitting there and I found 350 events in 54 countries took place, and it's more than the last year, showing that it's a momentum. We had more government, development sector partners coming on board, and also national governments, they start taking up the issue. Like Uganda was always at the forefront, Kenya, but we also had Ghana this year and Congo even. So I want to show you some, this is also from the graphics that we can see a really steep increase, and we can even go higher. And while India was the country with the biggest number of events, it's nice to see that's also equal between Africa and Asia, and also other countries in Europe and USA are taking up the topic to celebrate on 28 May. And I want to show you some impressions. So we had awareness events also in Sweden. Yes. Oops, sorry, I'm just technically. The day is used for education and engagement with governments. Also partners, as I said, come together and mobilize governments to celebrate. And in Ghana, the government issued a statement that MH Day should be commemorated in all the schools. So how you can get involved. So please become an official partners. So yeah, it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. On menstrualhygieneday.org. So please visit me. So give me 1 more minute to to introduce the Menstrual Hygiene Alliance, because as much Menstrual Hygiene Day is celebrated on 28 May, we can really see this movement. We need to benefit and catalyze progress on MHM all year round. And MHA can't do this, so that's why Global Citizens in Mavi and Wash United have initiated the Menstrual Hygiene Alliance in May this year. It's still work in progress, but what is important to say, it's an initiative, it's not an own organizations. We really want to benefit from existing platforms, from existing networks, to integrate menstrual hygiene management into ongoing processes. So these are the 4 outcome areas we want to, so the idea is to work on high-level policy advocacy, increased funding for MHM, increased awareness and social norms, and evidence-based decision-making. We've drafted a work program that I'm happy to talk with you in more details after this or over the next days. And of course, you maybe ask yourself how you can get engaged. So please get in touch if you either work in some high-level advocacy work around WASH, reproductive health rights, education, gender. Again, the idea is to amplify voices of everyone and be much more, have more weight and power. If you're interested and know about funding in MHM, and I'm looking at the donors, we would like to cooperate, and the MHM Education Challenge is for partners who work currently on MHM education to come together and announce commitments and what their successes have been. So thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, me too.
Me as well.
Yeah.
It's not warm in the room anymore. So thanks a lot. Do we have questions? The audience? Yes.
Yeah, I think the figures are really amazing. So congratulations for such an advocacy success. Absolutely. Question a bit that is this a new platform which is being created? Because you said we use existing platforms, but this is not an existing, it's a newly created between different organizations. Is that correct?
So the alliance, right?
Yeah. What I understood
So the
there.
alliance was just launched in May with the three initiating partners, Global Citizen, Zimavi, and WASH United. But it's really, we're looking forward to join forces with other platforms, with other partners, to also represent the alliance. So it's not limited to those three organizations. We're currently organizing work programs and advocacy strategy, but it's really open for partners engaged in the work programs to join.
Yes, another last question?
How would the joining work? I mean, we're working on menstrual hygiene management, obviously, in the schools. How would we join as an organization?
Yeah.
Would we join as a program?
Yeah, as an organization, and especially if you do MHM education, we'd love to talk to GIZ about the MHM Education Challenge, and also how we can together do the advocacy. So, yeah.
It's added to that. Just in, you could be, just to understand it. If that is such, this is a big movement all over at the moment.
Yeah.
But for example, that could also be have brought to the SuSanA network and move it here. I mean, is there a benefit of having a new? Just maybe explain it.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think if you, for example, I think MHM is a lot driven also from the WASH sector, but if we bring it to, for example, to the health sector or education sector, if you speak on behalf of a menstrual hygiene alliance to advocate for MHM, it gives another power than if you say, I'm talking on SuSanA who's doing X, Y, Z. So it's, if you're a SuSanA member, if you're representing GIZ, you can also then, if we're in dialogue, have represent the MH Alliance, which gives you more weight and more value to the voice to bring it in. That's the idea. It's the same like MH Day that you can use as a platform.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And yes.
It's about regional chapters, so please everybody stay in the room. We had already some good examples in the afternoon from our colleagues in Zambia, Kenya, Uganda, and now we will go even further and have examples from India and from Latin America and from the MENA region. So my name is Ann-Kathrin. I'm chairing the session together with my colleague Shobana from the SuSanA Secretariat. And so just before we start, I want to quickly say a few words about the regional chapters because they are quite a new initiative from SuSanA. So we started in 2015-16 with the Indian chapter. So that was triggered by the government, by the large sanitation programs launched in India, and the need to have discussion around the challenges and sustainability of that programs, which we brought upon the SuSanA platform. We will hear today as well about ideas around the chapter in Latin America, So I won't tell anything about that. Gustavo will tell us later what he has in mind and what others has in mind about Latin America and the chapter there or activities there. And now we are going to start with the MENA chapter and examples from the MENA chapter. That came up, I think, last year when there was an increased attention about that region, when there were more refugees in that region, humanitarian crisis. So there was a need also to coordinate activities of actors in that region, and SuSanA also offers that coordination platform. But also we looked into what kind of resources, what kind of demands are there. And we also had a call for project for that region because we wanted to have an overview what projects are there, what best practices are in the region. And today, it's my great pleasure to announce our two winners of that call for project. So we have two examples here, and we will start with Samir Bensaid from Morocco, and he's with the National Office of Electricity and Water. So, Samir, the floor is yours. Ah, here you are.
I would like first to thank you for awarding the Institute for this experience. I have to speak up?
Yeah, but then for the room. Yeah.
Okay.
It's only going to be internet.
Okay.
Your voice is
okay, thank you. Because in the other room, it was very clear, the voice. Okay. So I just... So I want to first, I am here to present this experience in behalf who are worked on this project directly. I am just the director of the institute, but the working group are Mrs. Khawla Lamzouri and Mr. Mustafa Mahi, and I allow myself to change a little bit the title. I changed sustainable sanitation at the origin. It was sustainable sanitation systems by appropriate. First, because by humility is not really sustainable. It's an experience to make or to propose something which is sustainable. And sustainability also is misused, at least overused. So appropriate for me is maybe in this case is more appropriate than sustainable. So, some just to put in the picture, ONEE is a public, nationwide public utility in Morocco, and you have some figures to give you an idea about this big company. Just here you have only the water branch. You have also another branch, electricity, which other 10 to 12,000 people working for this. We supply drinking water to 35 million directly or indirectly through municipalities. I am in charge of an international institute for capacity building and research. We think when we start at 1978, we start only by vocational training, and in 2008 we think that we can gain if we manage all the cycle of knowledge management by combining training and research, applied research. So we do, of course, training around the activities, and this project is within these activities. And we have also a component that we call partnership or technical assistant, but not the conventional technical assistance. It's more partnership, and we try to overcome the traditional concept of technical assistance. So we have some infrastructure. You can go to our website and you can find all this information. The main maybe assist of EU, what characterized the institute is we are affiliated to a performing utility, public utility. That's called ONEP. ONEP is the water branch of ONEE. And we have this experience of 34 years, and we are also WHO collaborating center since now 2 decades. You have here some main challenge of water sector in Morocco, but we can apply this to the region that was the subject of our project. So, of course, we have this escalating demand, but you have mainly this characteristic of drought and the diversity of landscapes in Morocco. You have mountain regions, you have coastal plain, you have desert, you have all, and water resources are not constamment, I don't know, quelqu'un. It's not in time and in space, it's very diversity. The general objective of this project, so first maybe Tlat Margan is small village, about 100 households, 600 people or 530 people. And the general objective is to come up with an appropriate technology to meet the demand of this village in terms of sanitation. And this solution should be, of course, appropriate, but also should be socially acceptable and affordable in terms of cost, and in terms of how to run this technology, and of course to protect environment, since that's now at this time there was no treatment plant for wastewater that's directly thrown in the river. And of course we fixed another objective to have the possibility. It's not an objective at the beginning, but we want also to experiment if you can reuse this water, if this technology can allow to reuse this water. You have the region it's not good, but is 30 kilometers far from Marrakesh, and the valley of the High Atlas mountain. And of course, you have, even if we are near the mountains, but there is scarcity of water resources. We have, as I said, wastewater was not treated. Problem of health and hygiene of local aquifers are completely polluted, that dedicate normally to drinking water, and of course negative impact on socio-economic development. Village located, of course, in a remote rural area, and poor area also, very poor. The main resources are from migration in Europe, and population around 500 people. So the roadmap of this project, first there is a proper preparatory phase that makes studies, diagnosis, technology choice also. We identify what are the 3 or technologies that can apply in this region. And we identify also the partners, first the users. So there is a very active NGO in the region, local authorities, of course, elected people, academia, very important, and local private, small local private. And the outcome for this phase that we come up with, very important, with a community development plan that exists at the institutional level. We have this possibility to design a community development plan that dealing with the entire chain of water, solid waste, of course, and also urban partnership. And we sign, of course, some partnership with the main partner for this project. We start after that in the experimental phase by setting up a laboratory pilot with the partnership with this academia. Is the University of Marrakesh. It's 30 kilometers far from this village, and the engineering was done by Mr. Mahi from the International Institute, and you have also some partner in Japan. The Japan is a professor that we meet in a EU meeting, and he worked as a volunteer in Niger, and he had this idea first of this technology of what we call multi-soil layering, and we built on this experience design and to experiment this technology. So as you can see here, we have many partners. The field pilots, so you upscale after, by constructing a field pilot. This field pilot is, we upscale, is we collect around 10% of the wastewater of the population, and we test this field pilot during 6 months before constructing the final and the whole project to meet the demand of all the village for the 600 or 100 households. So we construct, of course, the network, the MSL treatment plant, and we add also the reuse. The results of the treatment was very promising, so we can, of course, we propose to add another module of Reed's field to refine the water quality and to reuse this for agriculture. We recall here the partners, but those outcomes and achievement is, of course, that the people that beneficiate from this project. We save around 80 cubic meters per day for drinking water, and that was used from the same aquifers for irrigation. So this water is better, with the best quality, can used for drinking water. And we also help and accompany the population to setting up a user association for operating and maintaining and running the system. We, of course, through capacity building in our institute, and how to, and the total cost to give you an idea of the project, all the phases from preparatory, is around 500,000 euro, and the total definitive project of construction is around 2,000 euro, what represents around 30 euro per inhabitant. Compared, for example, to others in Morocco, only in Morocco, the cost for a conventional system in the urban area is around 1,000 euro. 1,000 dirhams, 100 euro. Here, of course, the objective of the project, as I mentioned before, is not only to respond or to meet the demand of this local the village, but to create a pilot and to disseminate this technology to other rural communities in the area, but also the area of Marrakesh, but also at the national level. So we contribute to many programs. The first one is in Morocco, we are designing a new national program for rural sanitation called PNAR. It's a French acronym of this program. And CESAR also is a capacity building program run by GIZ in Morocco. And that's at national level, but also at the regional level, we contribute to a program called MENA Network of Water Center. We share this technology, this project with other countries from MENA region, mainly Jordan, with Jordan. And of course, we have also capacity building and knowledge management. We try, in Clara, it was a project, EU project, in which a consortium from Ethiopia, South Africa, WRSC, we see it before, and many other countries contribute to this program, and is a toolbox of many solutions, and we contribute also in this Clara project to feed this as it was said, there is no solution that can feed all the situation, all the context. The idea here is this solution can fit for this local context, but it may be other context, but not for all. We don't propose this solution for. Now I want to share with you, that's more important for the network, SuSanA, some lessons and recommendation. For us in this, of course, this this project is not. There is many obstacles that we had to overcome. The first one is the institutional environment. I think it's the case in many development countries that there is a lack of R&D strategy. You have no research strategy, and you have no, for example, tax policy. If you want, I want, for example, for this project, we had, for example, many PhD students in different aspects. And I cannot, for example, pay this student to do this job. There is no framework, institutional framework to do that. That's just one example. There is, for example, I lost my time to resolve this problem of taxes. So it's a big mess, it's a big waste of time. That's very important. I think it's many development countries, the same problem exists. I think also that we have to make a shift in mindset of politicians, of engineers, of elected people and population, of course, citizen. That's some smart solution, low cost, that we call low cost. I prefer appropriate solution, are more smart than sophisticated solution in many cases in developing countries, because they are more adapted to the climate and local context than the sophisticated. So people that believe in this solution because they are low cost, they are second-hand solution for them. So that's very important to make advocacy, to communicate on this. And designing, it was said also by many people, many speakers, that building partnership and pooling resources is very important. Developing countries to build and to on experience. We cannot, for example, reinvent the wheel. We have to build on experience, and it's our duty to pool in resources. We cannot no more continue to rely only on a development mechanism. I talk for development countries. We should set up a sustainable mechanism to fund R&D. That's very important. And one proposal, for example, here proposition, it may be to link systematically in every program of infrastructure a percentage of R&D and capacity building is combined. If you invest in a huge program of infrastructure, you should dedicate 5% at least, maybe 10. We have to study that to capacity building and R&D. It's very vital if you want to make systems sustainable. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much. Can we get one question? So who would like to have the question? Everybody's tired? Okay.
No, it is good English. Thank you. You talked about the users group, and you said there is the community, the water user group, and there is the drinking water use as well as the agriculture use. No? I'm not sure whether all the people who use for drinking water also are from agriculture. But my question is, how do they agree on water shortage in case of water shortage? Because sometimes there's dry season, it's very important for the plants, it's very important for the people.
In general, in the water law in Morocco, potable water has the priority, of course. But in this village, like this village, all is the same. You cannot make this distinction between agriculture, even for bétail, c'est quoi? Yeah, cattle and drinking water. It's always so they deal with this all the time. They have their own rules to resolve this. Yeah. Of course. I don't talk. There are many aspects because lack of time. But I will send you. We are preparing a brochure on this project, detailed, and you can have more information. For example, we promote gender approach, and we are preparing for the future to help women to constitute cooperative. I don't know in English. Cooperative to manufacture this system of wastewater treatment. It's very easy to, and we material as from the region also. So it's easy. It's like poterie. La poterie, c'est quoi? La poterie. You know. Yeah, so it's the same principle. So we can train them, and you have, of course, the design of our role as an institute is how to design the system, to make some, we refine the system to have the best performance. But women there can do this manufacture themselves, this system at the village.
I just want to add that we have the project description of this project, also the Jordan project and many more from the MENA region. They're online on the SuSanA platform on the MENA chapter page. So if you want to have more information, and we can also put up that brochure there. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you so much, Samir. But before you leave, I would like to call Arne, our very own Arne, to present the certificate to Samir on behalf of GIZ and Sevas as a winner of Call for Projects. They were awarded a ticket to Stockholm. This is also for there too, right? For yeah, thank you.
We'll do it in front of, there's a surprise coming soon. And in front of the surprise, we can do that again. Probably. Okay, so once more.
Thank you.
So the next presentation would be by our second winner from Jordan. We'll have Maisam, Otoum, and Omar Alshoshan presenting about their project from Jordan on youth participation.
All right. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Maisam Otoum, and Mr. Omar is sitting here trying to help me with the presentation. Actually, our friend Mohammad wasn't able to make it, unfortunately, but I'm sure he'll be happy for us. I had to switch the presentation and update it with a newer version because I realized there was a typo, and it was a terrible typo if you've seen it. So now it's your job as a refresher for you all to find that kind of typo. If you find it, maybe we can split this in half. So, all right, thank you very much. Okay, the title you see on the screen is actually the larger theme of the project. I'm going to be specifically talking about one aspect of this project. So youth participation, local development, or environmental development in Jordan we found out that youth are not really interested when it comes to environment. They're more interested in jobs, employment, education. Environment is on the very low end of priorities for them. So that's actually the approach we had to work with youth on environmental leadership initiatives. First, let me thank all these people quickly. Special thanks to the project team. Also, FHI. They have managed the project, and they funded through USAID. I guess we have FHI representatives here, and SuSanA for inviting us and providing this opportunity. Also KFD and the wonderful group that we worked with. Actually, without those guys, we wouldn't be here. It's their work. We only supervised what's going on. We supervise the game, but they are the game changers in this case. Okay, so I'll let Omar maybe talk about the RFS Rural Family Society at the end of the presentation, but now I'll move to the general aspect of what we're doing. Why water? The question is why water? Well, you have Jordan here. It's actually water is a big issue in Jordan. Why? Because we have a lack of freshwater resources. We have very scarce rainfall seasons, And then there's a lot of water lost in the networks. And I guess we have people from GIZ here who works in Jordan, and they know what I'm talking about. There was reported 60% of all water in networks are lost before getting to the users, end users, which was a huge problem. I guess the number was reduced now to 40-something%, which is an improvement. And then groundwater depletion. We don't have a lot of groundwater resources. And then the major problem that was introduced just recently is the refugee influx. So now we have about 1.3 million registered refugees. And I say registered because we have another 700,000 or so, or maybe more. And then the water share per capita in Jordan is about 123 cubic meters annually. Oh, sorry, it's not annual, daily, sorry. And then that was the number in 2016 from the Jordan Times. So it's a huge problem. Okay, so and that's what we came with the idea of having a water-related initiative. I'm not gonna dig deep into that, but what we did is we started our project with actually approaching or reaching out to youth in 2 different regions. We trained them. We trained them not on wash, sanitation kind of training, but we started from scratch. We started from what environmental leadership is and why. Why is it important? Because we needed to actually work on this part to get him motivated to do stuff later. So we included stuff like environmental leadership, communication, communicating environmental issues through media, which youth like, especially with social media right now, and then advocacy for environment, and also proposal writing. Because at the end of the training program, what we asked the youth to do is to actually write proposals as if we were the donor, they were the receiving implementer, and they actually wrote drafted proposals that we evaluated, assessed, and we granted them sub-grants with the approval of the FHIT. Okay, so we had the project in 2 different areas. They're both in the eastern part of Jordan, which is an area under threat of desertification, lack of water resources. And then the reasons to select these areas is that water supply is very intermittent there, and contamination incidents are very high there. Okay, so after the training ended, just like I explained, we asked them to write proposals, and the actual the idea of having a gray water system installed in one of the schools was the youth's idea. We just formulated that idea and advised them on how to actually implement it. We provided technical support, we provided access to information, and we helped them actually implement it. So they picked a school, a girls' school, with 960 students, and they thought this is a good potential because in schools there's a lot of water consumption, and most of this water actually goes to waste, especially drinking water, because there's in our schools, usually we have a line of drinking taps, and whether it's girls or boys, whatever students, they keep it open, they leave the water running just for fun. They don't really appreciate the value of water, especially in a country like Jordan. Okay, so the idea was to actually install or construct gray water filtration reuse system. And I'm not gonna talk deeply about the technical parts because the technology is already there. It's a well-known technology. People use sand filters, but I will explain more on the social aspect. How did that impact the students afterwards? So in order for us to actually implement the initiative, we reached out to the school principal and the students and a couple of teachers that were involved in an environmental club in the school. And we presented the idea. They liked it very much, but then we had a problem how to sustain it. although it's a school, it's a structured entity, but in the same time, we need to make sure that the system after we leave is still on, is still operational. So on the left-hand side, you see this picture. Is it left? No, it's actually right-hand side. You see this picture with our youth actually training the students at the school of what is gray water. Why do we need to reuse it? Can we actually reuse it? That's one of the questions they addressed. And then how do we keep it operational, and how do we value this gray water actual output? The installation was finished. The system was operational. We actually took some samples and we sent them to one of the labs in one of the universities neighboring this area, just to see the quality. And the quality was good only for plants. Was not and not all plants, non-edible plants, because we were not sure at the beginning if we can actually grow edible plants. So we were cautious at the beginning. Well, we talked about the sustainability aspect, and now this is how we see the community after the small project. The community is now aware of the importance of water rationing and gray water reuse. They have technical knowledge about gray water. They know what it means and how to run it. And also they're responsible, which is very important, and they value teamwork. So that we made them engaged. So we created this sense of ownership for the project. It's your project, and we actually made them sign a memorandum of understanding at the end. You're responsible for this system. We can always advise you, but it's your responsibility. And they actually liked the idea, although it's more responsibility on their shoulders, but they actually liked it, and it worked. Just briefly, one of the questions that we thought we need to answer: why do we need to focus on a SuSanA chapter in our region? Well, I explained the water sector in Jordan and why is it important. If you look at the picture down there, it's the biggest refugee camp in Jordan and probably one of the biggest ever. It has about 80,000 refugees, and you can see just looking at the picture that the conditions in that camp are not sustainable. They're not taking into consideration sanitation. So we need to actually work on this, and not only through small-scale project, but through knowledge management, through something like SuSanA chapter in our country. Well, I just wanted to hand over to Omar just to make a couple of remarks about the society before we move to questions.
Thank you very much. I would like to take this opportunity to special thank for the SuSanA. Actually, it was a very informative day. We learned a lot in this day. Actually, the big lesson learned from this project, actually how to simplify the international knowledge into local knowledge. Actually, we focus in the key message, or the main key message with the youth. Think globally, act locally. So actually, Jordan now facing a lot of challenges, especially in water sector, especially when we receive millions of refugees since from 1948 until now. So we need youth play a crucial role in shaping their future, especially in natural resources and water resources. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much to both of you. That was very interesting. Good example. Can we have a question from the audience? Yes.
I love the way you involved the students. I love the way you involved them first on the environmental, as environmental leaderships, and then taught them proposal writing, which I'm sure they loved. Will you continue to mentor them so that hopefully they will enter the field of sanitation or water?
Well, the short answer is definitely, because once you start something and you believe in it, that's a good thing. And to me, maybe the whole project umbrella was important, but this this particular part was really important because it involved student education and work on the ground, which I like the most. Well, the long answer is yes, and the good news is that the same group that we worked with in this project, actually 3 months after we finished the project, they implemented 2 similar initiatives with gray water systems in 2 different schools without our even funding. They brought funding from somebody else. We were kind of jealous, actually. It's like, you go somewhere else. Yeah, but they actually did it, and it was a success story for us. Now you actually clone this kind of success in different areas, and the community they work with is relatively small community. So everybody's talking about what's happening, and that's great, actually.
Good.
Thank you. There seems to be one more question. Very quickly, please.
Yes, thank you very much for this very interesting project and presentation. The questions, you clearly highlight the fact that you work with youth. What was the initial background needed from these youth people before you do also yourself the trainings?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, the group we worked with had about 32 I think 32 men and women, or let's say young men and women. The background was varied. We had people with very minimum education, middle school education. We had high school education. We had university students. We even had our friend Mohammad, he's actually a lecturer at one of the universities, and now he's actually giving classes about gray water systems, and he's trying to spread the word and say, okay, we're in a country where we're suffering from lack of water resources, and we only blame the government, which partially their problem, but I think majorly it's our behavior. We're not treating water as a valuable asset. We're treating water as something that comes out of the tap every time we open it. And I was talking to, I think, Francisca today. We haven't thought about this before just because of the fact that we always have water. If we had the government shut down water, we would feel more the urge to do something. I don't know if that's a good strategy to do, shut down the water every time, but people have to feel that they need to do something about it, not assume that the government is working on it. Did you have? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just really shortly. I'm really happy that you and also Samir introduced your projects and showed that there are relevant activities in the Middle East, because just to add to what Anna said in the beginning, when we started initiating the chapter by the end of last year, we had almost 0 partners in the Middle East, or SuSanA has almost 0 partners in the Middle East, which was one of the motivations to start, knowing we don't have really a strong network there. Our resources are maybe not adapted to the context as it would be most relevant. And I mean, now we're in the process to really strategizing our activities and upscaling our outreach. And I just want to say that the chapter as it is not exclusive. We're really trying to, to bring more partners and projects in. And we have on Wednesday a MENA chapter partner meeting. So you are invited, but also others who are active in the region or who know other people who do. So please feel invited, because we would like to exchange and discuss with more people who are working there and who are relevant for the exchange. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now Arna will award the certificates to Omar and Mike.
Okay, so how should I do that you are happy? One after the other? Okay, I can as well say that we were thinking how to get ideas from the region, how to activate it. It's thanks to the Jordan GIZ program as well, who was supporting this process, and I'm really happy that we found you and that we could activate some of you. Yeah. And okay, so then I hope I do the procedure so that you like it. And this one. Okay. And I think we're not allowed to stay in front of the...
Yeah, yeah.
So we have to somehow pull it up here. Okay, very, okay. So, like this. Yeah. And one more. Thank you. Okay, we're almost through.
Just to announce the venue and timing for the MENA regional chapter meeting, it will be taking place in Scandic Clara Hotel on the 30th of August, Wednesday, from 3 to 5 p.m. Anyone who's interested and working in the MENA chapter are very much welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
So now we continue with India, and I would like to ask Vishwanat to come up.
Thank you. It's a tough evening, and body and spirit and everything else has left the room, so pardon me for being a bit sharp. And I've just been given 5 minutes by the organizer, so that's perfectly wonderful that I don't have PPT to kill you with. So here's the situation with India. The SuSanA India chapter was started a year and a half back, 2 years back, has held several discussions on the web and has participated in the FSM4 meeting in Chennai. But here's where the need is. India has built 47 million toilets since October 2nd, 2014. Will build 63 million more toilets by October 2nd, 2019. That is, in a span of 5 years, 120 million toilets will be built. Thank God Jay is not here. I don't know what he was smoking, but these will all be single pit toilets. They won't even be twin pit toilets, they'll all be single pit toilets. 120 million existing pit toilets, add another 120 million existing new pit toilets. And then you in the sector know what the challenge is. How is the pit to be emptied? Where is the waste to be taken care of? And so on and so forth. That's one side, and that's just the rural side. In the urban side, there are 8,000 towns crying out for sanitation services. 3.5 million toilets have been built there. Another 7 million will be built, but wastewater treatment plants are yet to catch up. Fecal sludge treatment plants are yet to catch up. Policies are being written by interest groups. Sludge management policies are being written by separate interest groups. Wastewater management policies are being written by other interest groups. None of these are challenged. Unfortunately, there's not enough debate, there's not enough discussion. Not that there are lack of groups in India, but the diversity is so enormous in the Indian context that one city is different from the other city, one state is different from the other state. Experiences are not getting shared enough, there's not enough discussions, and hopefully SuSanA India will seek the conviction and the strength to deepen itself, and SuSanA as a whole will hopefully learn that it's not merely a knowledge disseminator, but it's also a knowledge accumulator, and that there's a tremendous bunch of knowledge on the ground that we don't really have an ear for merely because we think we are knowledge providers. And I hope that arrogance doesn't come to us, and hopefully at least the more I spend time on the field, the more I know that I don't know. So with those wise, profound words, I'll stop because I think everybody wants to have beer and cut cake. But if there are any questions...
Thank you very much. That was short but precise. I would suggest we just continue with Gustavo, and then we have questions for the both of you afterwards. So Gustavo comes from Bolivia, from Aguatuya, and will present a few ideas for a potential chapter in Latin America.
That's right. Now we'll be just as brief as the previous presenter. Yes, this will be very quick. I think we're all a little bit tired by now. My name is Gustavo Heredia. I'm on the board of Aguatuya in Bolivia. We work in water and sanitation, specifically wastewater treatment. I would like to share first a little bit on the context of Latin America. Right now, about 2/3 of sewage water goes untreated to the rivers, spreading disease and degrading the environment. Only last year, Latin Americans lost a combined 900,000 years of life because of disability, ill health, or death in 1 year. And much of our current infrastructure is not prepared for trends such as rapid urbanization or to face extreme weather events associated with climate change. Right, so we have these huge challenges right now. And what we see on the field is this. I mean, in the last 20 to 30 years, a lot of money has been invested in building wastewater treatment plants, sewers. And when we go to those projects, we find that in many cases they are not working. Now, countries in South America have decided to invest until 2030. They want to invest $80 billion in sewage infrastructure and $30 billion in wastewater treatment plants. So this huge amount of money is going to more infrastructure, right? But we don't want to make the same mistakes, of course. And one of the big problems is that binary scenario that we talked before today, right? Everybody wants either, well, actually, everybody wants sewers and nobody wants pit latrines, and there's nothing in between, right? So we think that in order to tackle these challenges and in order to avoid making the same mistakes, we have to capture knowledge on sanitation, right? And SuSanA, of course, is a very nice platform to accumulate knowledge, to disseminate knowledge, to discuss sustainable sanitation knowledge. But I think in South America, there's a huge language barrier, right? Because academia, they can access all our documents that we have in the SuSanA platform. But the politicians don't speak English, and the sanitation practitioners on the field don't speak English as well, either. So the idea is to share the SuSanA platform with South America, because business as usual is not an option anymore. And instead of just spending more money, we have to spend better, right? And that goes hand in hand with knowledge. So basically, the idea is to set up a Latin American chapter of SuSanA to connect practitioners to people in the academia, to perform knowledge management. There is actually research going on also in South America, especially in Brazil. There's a lot going on in Colombia, but it's not together. It's spread everywhere, right? So we want to have a common platform to share these experiences, also with the existing experience in the network. So knowledge management, and also disseminate the best practices, the lessons learned, and the conclusions, right? So that's the idea, basically, that we want to present in this meeting. We have been a member of SuSanA since 2010. We think there's a lot of value to provide for all members of SuSanA and also potential members in Latin America. These are some of the short-term benefits that we could think about. We can reduce time and cost for project implementation. We can have different perspectives when we have a discussion. We can have cross-sector cooperation, more financing opportunities. Those are all short-term benefits, right? But also long-term benefits for the region, such as improved quality of sanitation solutions, stronger standardization and consensus, knowledge-based alliances, and improved ability to seize development opportunities. So we see all these benefits as long as we get together and share some common platform that can be used not only worldwide, but also in the region in Spanish and in Portuguese. There are 375 members of SuSanA in Latin America. 13 of them are partners. But there's hundreds and thousands of other institutions and other research networks and universities that are showing currently some interest, and maybe they will be interested also in cooperating in this initiative of launching a new chapter. So the idea is basically this, and we want to see who's interested, and we want to put a call on the networks, on the social networks, on the SuSanA platforms to see who will be on board to support such an initiative. Thank you very much. And maybe we have time for half a question.
Well, half a question for you, half for Vishwanat. So the floor is open for comments, questions.
Are there any discussions around the SuSanA meeting in the World Water Forum? Are you planning for something there?
Our plan is to use this time, the time between now and the World Water Forum, to get some momentum and see who's interested, and we can use the World Water Forum to have like a committee or some people that have confirmed interest, or some institutions especially that would like to support this.
Yes, I have half a question and half a comment. I think it's great to use the opportunity of the World Water Forum coming up. And I think the question would be, how does the cooperation system look like that you will form? Because we would need on a project type level that this is the person or the institution or the group who is financing it. These are the deliverables, and like this can be presented to the core group. And I think it's vibrant enough. It's a good opportunity, but so that the motivation is to bring it towards that direction.
Right, right. Yeah, thanks for the comment and question. That's something we want to talk about here during the week. That's why I was so interested in looking at what has happened in India and in the MENA region and Jordan, and learn from them also, right? So we can build on that and maybe avoid some mistakes. And and I think there's interest from CIDA. CIDA is very interested in supporting. We're working with CIDA already in Bolivia, and we have partnerships with some universities in Brazil as well. And there's a couple of strong networks such as EcoSanLac and also ProSap in Brazil. Perfect. And they're interested in creating like a coordination committee or something like that to start a project.
Great. So. Okay, thanks again to the moderators and the presenters. We've made it nearly. If I'm not mistaken, we have now only 3 things to do. One is that we'll be honored by the German ministry with a few remarks and by the Gates Foundation with a few remarks. In the morning we talked about how much they helped this happening, and we just want to hear their voices. What is their impression? What are their thoughts? And then Madeline and me will close. But I think now I'm very happy, Daniela, Karl, that you're there, and share a few words with us, please.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm invited. Yeah.
Wir müssen rechts von der Linie stehen aufgrund
danke.
dass man nicht im Licht steht.
Not German, not German.
The instructions about this.
Well, I should not stand here, but be here. So, well, Anna invited me to talk on reflections on SuSanA's potentials and possible future. And with the same title, Jan-Willem is invited to have some words about his reflections. So I start with the 10 years ago when SuSanA was founded. It was founded to enhance sustainable sanitation solutions and effective sanitation solutions. It was founded to promote learning and to spread knowledge in the community of sanitation. And looking back, I think I see different developments and very positive, especially here. I can mention the progress and the growing resilience and the growing commitment of the partners and members in the network itself. But moreover, of course, we see, as we heard, the quality of the discussions. For example, today, we heard visions on future sanitation systems under the title of Dealing with the Madness, in brackets, with flush toilets. But we also heard about former innovative technologies, such as, I can't remember the exact name, such as urine separating toilets or so, which came to an end and are not produced anymore, as I understood. But I could have mentioned other presentations. This shows how progressive and intensive the exchange in this network is, has been, and hopefully will stay in the future. With its 8,000 individual members and 300 partner organizations, the growth of SuSanA is clearly a sign that we need this knowledge platform and we need the thematically focused network. And on behalf of BMZ, I may say BMZ recognized this and will remain a donor for the network, but in the sector sanitation as bilateral donor. We as BMZ, we are focused, we focus on consistent inclusion of sanitation in a political international arena, so on a high level as you can say. But for many years, BMZ has emphasized two key factors in the sector. The first is to focus on the whole sanitation chain, and the second is to overcome the fixation on centralized systems that do not benefit the underserved and the marginalized. And this is something I can underline because BMZ was able to launch last week in English the new BMZ water strategy. It is called water strategy and not wash strategy because it is broader than just wash. And in the process of developing this strategy, we invited all the stakeholders, for example, the German WASH network, in Germany, not the international stakeholders, border, for example. In this new German water strategy, the human rights approach is underlined and the human rights approach to water and sanitation and the leave no one behind principle. And of course, then the principle, all the interconnections and the principles of the Agenda 2030. Since the Foundation BMZ has financed and supported the SuSanA Secretariat, held by the GIZ Sustainable Sanitation Sector Program. And we see SuSanA, as we have seen in the past, as a driving force and key contributor to the sector. And with the additional funding with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I think to improve the SuSanA platform, BMZ is excited to see the positive changes and the even greater potential impact SuSanA will have in the future. And if I may wish something for the future, or that what we may see looking back until today, I hope that we will go into scale with sustainable sanitation solutions, because there is so much to do. So in the very end, what I have to say is I'm pleased to be here. I'm pleased to meet with you, the partners and the members, and to congratulate all of you to the 10th anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. Yes, we could embark in many discussions, but you can try, I think, during a glass of wine and find you as well during the water week. Huh? I think we cut it short here. Yeah. Okay. Jan, how are you? You are with the Gates Foundation.
I am with the Gates Foundation.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell us something.
Tell you something. Tell you something. I'm going to tell you something. What a day.
Yes, you have to.
I have to stand here?
Yes, otherwise you have the light, and in the living
yes.
rooms all over the world, they see only the... Yes.
You spent this day, most of it anyway, in a meeting. I'm very sorry that I wasn't be able to do that, to be here. I spent most of this day in an airplane. I think I've been awake for about 30 hours now, which means I'm going to need some of my notes. Otherwise, I'm going to sound too much like a certain president who speaks without notes as well. But I've gotten some input about this meeting. I've talked to Arno. I've talked to Arne. I've seen some of the last sessions in the overflow room over there, and I've gotten at least a bit of a feel for the enormous energy and the commitment that was evident in this meeting. Also evidenced by the fact that you're all still here. I'm sure you'd much rather be out with your friends having a beer. You covered tons of subjects that we all have to deal with, learn how to deal with in the upcoming SDG area. There's not a hope in hell that I'm going to reflect on all these complexity and all the subjects that you have covered. I don't want to either. What I would like to do is put the work that, or the reason we all work with SuSanA a little bit in the context of the reason we're here in Stockholm and in the context of the strategy of the foundation. They'll be narrowly focused, but at the same time that will allow me then to keep it short and help you get out of here. And I wanted to start a little reflection with a quote from a British author, Douglas Adams, who wrote the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And one of the things he wrote in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is human beings who are almost unique in having the ability to learn from the experience of others are also remarkable for their apparent disinclination to do so. We laugh about that, but it's a relevant observation. I've been working on an analysis of some of the work that the foundation has done since 2007. And in the past 10 years, we have invested about $180 million, give or take a few million, in a portfolio of grants that were all structured around learning. And a big slice of those grants combined service delivery with learning about what works in service delivery. So we can say, yes, as a result of those investments, 20 million people have access to improved sanitation. Some of the grants were only focused on evidence and learning. So relative to 10 years ago, we now know a lot more about the use of specific delivery models, use of subsidies, use of financing, microfinance, the cost of delivery, a whole range of things. And it's of course not only the foundation making those kind of investments and learning about what works. We're all in this together as organizations and as a sector. But if I stick to what I know best, you say, well, $180 million, that's a lot of money invested in information, in evidence and learning. And a question from the beginning in this has been, how can we leverage that sort of investment to make sure that what we learn contributes to better programming? Because unless we find ways to translate what we're learning into putting it into use, the value of the investment is not nearly as large as it could be or should be, you could argue. So what can we do to prove Douglas Adams wrong and improve the learning we can do from others? And SuSanA has been part of that journey with the foundation from the beginning, supporting the KM needs, the knowledge management needs in the sector as a whole. But talking about how we leverage knowledge is way easier said than done. This morning, I guess actually yesterday morning by now, I received an email from Practical Action Publishing announcing the publication of a new book by Robert Chambers. And I don't remember what the title of the book is, but one of the reviewers quoted in this email, he quoted T.S. Eliot, who said, "Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? How do we improve the signal to noise ratio and make sure that within this never-ending flow of information we all have to deal with, we pick out those things that are most worth using?" And I think reflecting on that, my friends, is one of the reasons we are here today and we are here this week. Gathering information and sharing it is useless unless we can place it in context, we interpret it and use it not only to improve sanitation services, but to make the world a fairer place and to put those who come last first. And I wish I could stand here and tell you we figured out how to do that. I'd be lying if I did that. But one of the reasons the foundation is looking forward to continuing the relationship with SuSanA and continuing to work together is SuSanA's ability to not only collect information, but also make the necessary connections between other countries, other actors, between individuals, to put that knowledge to use. You've, over the last 10 years, gathered some of the ingredients and the experience needed to do this well, but the needs are not trivial, as we all know. And you talked about what it takes to do that today, to move to 2030 and the SDG goals, and getting SuSanA ready for that future that we're all facing together in the sector will take just as much work as moving forward on delivering services to all. And to help get there, the particular investment that the foundation is making is focusing on the three things you talked about earlier today, I understand. Yeah, the user base, where Europe and the US are overrepresented relative to other countries. So how can we even that out and increase the user base? Understanding the services required and requested by the users and offering those in a practical way through the platform. And of course the sustainability of the platform in the long term, with cross-cutting across those three themes, the need to ensure that management and decision-making embody the desires and visions of the users, which will become harder as the network and the user base grows. So there's a lot that has been accomplished. SuSanA is a desirable and a welcome destination for many people that are wanting to share information, wanting to access advice, want to exchange views, and the potential for reaching an even larger group of users is huge. Maximizing that potential will require a lot of hard work, and so I would urge anybody who has not yet completed the survey or users to do so, because understanding what your users want is one really important part of making a useful platform. And of course, keep coming to these meetings and speak out and let everybody know what it is you're thinking about in addition to what you're learning. When I was asked by my director when we made this last grant to SuSanA, he said, well, is this investment worth the money? I couldn't give him a straight answer, and I gave him a bit of a roundabout answer. I said, if SuSanA can deliver on the vision of widespread use of and engagement in the platform, resulting in improved quality of programs and better performance metrics for the sector in terms of scale, sustainability, equity, it will have been worth the money. If not, not so much. And that answer represents the uncertainties we face, and we must be really honest about and need to be realistic about as we look at moving forward. The foundation is good at asking for particular outcomes from grantees and then getting out of the way and letting our grantees figure out how to get there. Within the structure of SuSanA, you have a fantastic position to take on some of the questions we're asking of SuSanA, and to kind of kick the tires a bit, sometimes rejecting what we're asking, sometimes hopefully finding new things to focus on, new ways to do things. But in all of that, what we need to realize is that this is an investment in a set of tools, not in a set of sector outcomes. In themselves, the platform and the forum, they don't mean anything without being put to use by you and all the other users. Information can be collected and can be made available, but getting to know it, apply it, and then sharing what you did and what happened, that's up to all of us. So if I'm to express a hope and a request to all of you, it's this. Prove that SuSanA can continue to make a difference and can do even better in the next 15 years. The potential is great. The need is there. Be the change you want to see. And we'll see the results we all want. And I'll be able to face my director and say, yes, we did the right thing. Thanks a lot for all you do. I wish you a great week, and thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you, Jan. Great. Yes, no. A certificate, perhaps. Come, Madeleine. Yes.
Yes, Arne. Here we are again.
Here we are again.
And you know what?
What?
We have skipped one point that we always had.
Yes, I know. But tell me what. Maybe I know the second one.
Are we going to manage to have a SuSanA meeting next year in Stockholm? We usually had that question in the beginning. Do you remember?
Yes. Are we having a SuSanA meeting next year in Stockholm? Is there any option?
Yes, I think so. With that, I also wanted to say that we have a supportive agency behind us also.
Yeah.
But it's also channelized a little bit different. But SIDA is also behind. But they are Swedes, like to be off on vacation on weekends, and, but they are very busy also. But anyhow, so
okay,
I just wanted to mention in a little that SIDA has also been quite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
through this. Yeah.
And we skipped the point that we think that where's the South meeting and what are the meetings to come, and we'll skip it.
But we won't skip the meetings.
No,
no,
but the discussion.
Yes.
And I think that especially last year we had somebody coming who the suitcase wasn't arriving, so he was there very sportive during the presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. This time we had several people like you being awake for 30 hours or to a high number of hours, but still so many are here, and it's really great. And there was Doreen who was saying that, oh, the agenda, and well, there's so many great. I squeeze it in. Yes, and here, yes, we done it. And then I looked at the agenda today, and that we had from 1 o'clock to 6:30, 15 minutes break. This is only possible if it's such an excited, enthusiastic group, and such presentations which are so setting us all on fire, and that's why we're here, and that's why we can do such madness. I think we close it here, and will you talk about what we had in Ashburn and what we had in India and what we'll have now soon, and how are we having that?
Yes, maybe. You know, we haven't talked so much about it, but we are actually 10 years celebration.
Yeah.
The whole year. So we started out in Ashburn, and then in India. I wasn't there, and now it's coming here. And the celebration will be outside here, and we have a very special made cake for you. and some and my interns has organized it very nicely. Yeah, not the way we would like it to see the kind of the real thing, but it's okay.
So again, that is there. Okay.
And one little detail is that this was ordered from Germany to a Swedish bakery, and the Swedish bakery do not know what a squatting pad is, so we haven't been very successful in monitoring or evaluation. So it looks more like a shower. This is what happens when you order this kind of cakes without supervision. We have to improve that our monitoring and evaluation. Yes, no, honestly, we are delighted to have you here. We have a small mingle outside. We have a wonderful cake and even more beautiful cupcakes. I tweeted a picture to my family this morning, and they said she's crazy. Anyhow, they are very nice. Please stay with us. Talk about everything you didn't talk about during all those missing breaks. And we will need to leave here to a restaurant well, quite soon. We'll send delegations, because it's impossible to book a table where we booked a table today and say, well, maybe it comes 25 or 100 persons and everyone will pay by themselves or whatever. And they said, no way. This is a vacation period in Sweden. But we have a reservation in a good area.
Okay.
Everyone will be there, and we will walk slowly down.
Okay, so there is a dinner place and we'll find out where it is. It's as well in the program. We'll have a cake cutting ceremony.
Yeah.
Just now. There is a pressure to eat cake.
Yes. Drink wine.
To drink wine and to have fun. And with this, I think we formally close the 24th SuSanA meeting. Great you were here.
Thank you.